Hello and welcome to the Yachting Brief, a podcast where I'm speaking to some of our industry's best experts. I'm finding out about their careers, what they've been up to and where they're heading next. So if you enjoy all things yachting and want to hear more insights of our industry, just keep on watching. And if you're out there and wondering what to do with your yachting brand and just not sure where to head, go to my website at studiovoyage.co.uk or message me on LinkedIn and I can see where I can help you elevate your yachting story. I am joined by leadership, grit and adventurer Grant Maughan. Grant is the epitome of resilience, leadership and adventure. As a highly experienced super yacht captain, he has navigated some of the world's most challenging waters, from the Antarctic to the Arctic. Beyond yachting, he is an accomplished ultra-endurance athlete and high-altitude mountaineer. He's summited Everest and competed in some of the toughest races in the world. With a deep understanding of yachting, engineering, refits, cutting-edge design, Grant's expert spans both technical mastery and mental fortitude, as well as recently publishing a new book, which we're going to talk about. So, welcome, Grant, to the Yachting Brief. We start off with a little bit of an introduction about you, Grant. You tell me what's going on. Where are you in the world?
I'm currently at home in Palm Coast, Florida, which is up in the northeast, just south of St. Augustine. Moved up here from South Florida last year. South Florida just got a bit busy for us, but green card holder in the US. I'm an Australian citizen, and I've just gone through my citizenship interview for the US. That went well, and I'm just waiting now to see what the final answer is, the final verdict. But I've been coming to the US for about 30 years to work on super yachts all over the world and spent quite a bit of time here. I do come from the commercial sector, mainly deep sea trawling and tugboats, and I've been a captain for about 29 years on mega yachts. So that's my story in a nutshell. I'm still going, I'm still working at sea and still enjoying it, and I think I've got quite a few years left in me on the old deep blue.
I like that. Whereabouts are you on board at the moment? Are you on rotation?
Firstly, after 40 years at sea, I've never had a rotation. I'd very much like to get a position like that. Currently, I'm doing a temp position looking after a vessel that's for sale, and then I have a delivery coming up next month, and I've had a couple of interviews recently for some other work, so we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously we mentioned earlier you're an author, you're a published author, and you've just done your Audible for that as well. So if you want to tell us a little bit about your book.
So I started writing Freezing Hot about 3 years ago. I had a whole bunch of race reports that I'd already written about some of these difficult ultra marathons that I run around the world. So I collated all that and put it together. Then I added other adventurous stories like climbing Everest and Denali and pulling a sled through the Yukon and the Iditarod in Alaska. And a part of how I grew up and my background that drew me towards doing that ultra endurance and extreme sports. And I think it's a pretty good read. And then I finally did the audio book, and people said you have to narrate the book yourself, just, for the Australian accent and the colloquialisms we use down in Australia. So I've just finished doing that in my little purpose-built sound booth here in my house, and I'm quite happy with how it comes out. So I hope people that get a chance to read it really enjoy it and get a bit of a buzz from what I do in the background.
Yeah, we'll definitely include a link into that as well so people can have a listen. I'm definitely interested to listen. I've got to the point where I'm no longer on board and I have time to read books. So it's a fortunate place to be. And that draws us back into, let's find out where the combination of your ultra endurance mixed with yachting. So where did you start in the yachting industry? You said you come from a commercial background, and how did that come into this epic career?
Cocktail of careers. Well, after working on commercial fishing vessels for many years, deep sea trawlers, purseaners, trap boats and things like that, and tugboats and other commercial vessels, I ended up in the Red Sea working on a liveaboard dive boat, and I was the chief engineer on that boat for about a year and a half, and we worked in Israel, Egypt, Sudan, Djibouti, Eritrea, and down the Seychelles and that. And one day we're in Mahe in the Seychelles, and there's big, beautiful yacht came in. I'd never seen anything like it. It was brand new. It was built by Lursen, and at that time it was called Coral Island. And my eyeballs just about fell out of my head when I seen that thing. And I got talking to a couple of crew later on, and they told me all about this yacht industry that was going on somewhere else in the world. So straight away, I decided that I needed to pursue that. And I eventually started work on the biggest yacht in Australia at the time, which was 100 feet, called Southern Cross 2, and I started as engineer there and then worked my way up to captain. and never looked back. Ended up in Florida and doing new builds and working on all different yachts all over the place, particularly explorer style vessels.
Isn't it mad that at that time nobody really knew what yachting was, and then all of a sudden it's like this unearthed world that you just came across? And obviously the industry in Australia is really booming. I hear from a lot of people, and the Melbourne especially. There's a real kick for marinas to start establishing themselves a bit more. Is that something that you've noticed, or do you tend to get home?
Totally, I've noticed it. Like I said, when I started working on a yacht in Australia, it was 100 feet, and that was mind blowing to everyone down there, even myself. But now I see there's a lot of big yachts heading down that way, working on the East Coast and even up north out of Darwin and that, checking out some of the beautiful scenery we've got down there. So, and also a lot of Australian owned yachts now.
Okay.
The demographics changed. Before it was, the US and Europe, that's where all the big yachts were owned. But now there's a few in Australia as well, which is good to see. I'd perhaps like to pursue that area of the industry before I retire as well. I've seen a lot of the Australian coast, but there's still plenty I haven't seen and plenty of good stuff.
And then from that, you captained for many years. And are there things in your career that are really, a real learning curve for you, and something that you even think back now on, you take that learning from, or like an experience, or I don't know, just maybe a crew member or something that's, led you to the leadership style that you have today?
I think a lot of that was developed in the commercial deep sea fishing vessels, because it was like a crazy Wild West time. I was working on these deep sea trawlers south of Tasmania in the Southern Ocean, halfway to Antarctica. The weather is incredibly brutal down there. At the time, I thought the vessels were really big. They were like 100 feet to 120 feet. People were getting injured all the time. You'd work for, I think our record on one boat was 2 hours sleep in 5 days. And during that time, we're out on the deck moving 150 tons of fish and 50 tons of ice manually. And I've seen a lot of people get hurt, people get washed over the side. I think I developed my leadership style a lot from going through instances like that. And when I got on yachts, I found out that the safety culture was almost not there. And some of the skill level was really surprisingly on how low it was. So my teaching style when I get on a boat is to look how some of the people are going about their duties, and if I can offer any assistance or teach them how to tie a new knot even, I'll do that. And I think that comes over good in the leadership style. People kind of look up to you as a mentor.
Yeah. And whereabouts in did the likes of the things like the ISM and the IMO come into all of this? Because obviously the safety precautions we have now on board are incredible, and so they should be. There's so many lives and so much, danger at risk, and obviously incidences do happen in the industry. So where was that in the period of time? Was it just not a thing?
Well, when I started in the commercial sector, the boats I worked on had nothing like ISM, and when I started in the yacht game, there was nothing like ISM. That only came in, maybe a decade later. They started talking about it, and there was a lot of teeth clenching and hands thrown in the air. Oh, it's, just a bureaucracy, administration. We don't need it and that. But personally, I find ISM really easy to do. It's just a habit you get into every day when you get up onto the bridge and make sure it's all done. And the beauty about it is it's protecting people from getting injured. And I've seen bad stuff on boats happen. In fact, I lost my left eye on a boat. I'm blind in one eye. And there was no ISM on that boat. And now I'm very particular about that and following the standards. Even if the boat doesn't have ISM, we instigate some sort of practices to protect people. Because, like I say, the skill level sometimes is surprising to me, even to this day. Some people have got great skills, they've learned and they've delved into what they need to do to become a professional seafarer. Others are just there to, for the lifestyle. So I'm all about the safety and teaching people how to do the right thing. And a lot of it comes down to your responsibility and what sort of strife you can get into as the captain as well for not looking after your crew. And it's your duty to do that. So I'm big on safety on board boats.
Yeah, and I suppose, would you say that's part of the philosophy that you developed as a leader on board and, out on when you're doing these ultra events?
Yeah. I mean, some of the things you learn by doing ultra marathon events and climbing big mountains is, you have to rely on yourself and you have to make split-second decisions sometimes, which could affect a positive or a negative outcome. So you have to really toss up all the variables and all the metrics and try and come up with the best answer at the time. And it's the same working at sea, because the sea is a dynamic environment. The sea never sleeps. The boat's always moving. There's always weather about you, and you've always got multiple things going on at the same time. So a yacht captain or a head of department, even on a large vessel, has to multitask and has to be continually focused, and it's mentally exhausting to do that sort of stuff. In fact, I think some of the problem with accidents on boats isn't just not following rules and safety procedures. I think it's mental exhaustion. Takes away the focus. So after I finished working on those commercial fishing vessels and seeing a lot of wild, dangerous stuff, I decided that the way the yacht industry going with ISM and ISPS was a good thing, and it should not just be administrative and bureaucratic, but it should just be part of the culture, you know.
For you, was it a massive step? So from coming from the commercial into the yachting industry, into this world of difference, were the steps of responsibility a lot more intense, or was it just something you took in your stride and something that you developed and evolutionized as you went along?
Yeah, it was kind of like an evolution. You know, it was difficult and hard. There was some things I came across in the yacht industry that I didn't really expect would be so hard, and that was, dealing with ownership, explaining to owners why their boat costs money and it needs maintenance, working with shore managers. I've had great success working with shore companies, and I think it's imperative if you're a yacht captain that you're going to be working with a DPA and a shore management company, and you just have to come to the realization that they're there to help you. They're not a bureaucracy that's going to slow your day down. And if you work in tandem like that, I think it just goes like fluid. It just works for everyone for the best at the end of the day. It makes everyone's job easier.
What's your experience been like with refits? Have you done any you hear about refits all over Europe and everyone says, oh, you're going to France or you're going here. Like, has there been any particular regions that you've just really, really enjoyed doing them in a certain area?
Yeah, I've done a lot of refits and new builds around the world.
Any particular standout moments?
Well, I did a new build in Denmark once. I was there for 2 years. And what I really liked about the Danish people is they're very community oriented. And we built the boat in a very tiny little town in a little family owned shipyard. And when we first went there to do it, the local people couldn't understand how someone could have so much money to be able to build something so extravagant, a 200-foot plus yacht. But after a while, they realized how much we were bringing into the economy and how much was helping everyone in town, regardless if they worked in the shipyard or not, because we had to go and buy groceries and rent cars and do all sorts of things. So it was just continual economy upgrade for their little town. And by the time we left, everyone appreciated that business had been brought to their little town.
If you put crew anywhere, they will spend their money. Anywhere, yeah. Which is amazing, especially when you get to the Caribbean after a crossing.
And I've done 21 Atlantic crossings, so yeah, I know all about that.
There you go, you've won. I haven't spoken to anyone else who's done that. But well, yeah, I actually had a discussion with a gentleman yesterday, and he was talking about when he first started in the industry, and he was actually working with his dad on his first boat, and he'd set off. And when he started, you didn't have satellites, you just didn't have signal. You left the Caribbean in Antigua and you were heading to Europe, and then you landed and you got news.
Right. And, you hear it even today. You'll be going across an ocean and suddenly the SATCOM will drop out for half a day and you hear about it straight away, like within milliseconds. Everyone's like, wow, the internet's down. And then I go, listen up. When I was crossing oceans many years ago, you rang your mother on a pay telephone and said, you might hear from me in 3 or 4 weeks. Hopefully you'll hear from me in 3 or 4 weeks. We don't have any other comms. And then you'd run down to the bookstore, buy half a dozen books and maybe some cassette tapes to play in your Walkman on the way over. And that was how you endured all those days at sea. Now it's quite simple. It's almost like you hardly leave port, but you're just down the road and you can talk to your wife on Zoom and talk to your dog and all that. So things have evolved, for the better, I think. But I think with the younger people in the industry, you have to let them know that they've got it pretty easy now compared to the good old days.
And with that being said, so you've done 21 Atlantic crossings. Where else have you been?
I've done Trans-Pacific 7 times. I've done the Indian Ocean twice. I've been up to Greenland a handful of times. I've been down to Antarctica. I've been up the Orinoco River in Venezuela, up the Danube River in Romania, all around Ukraine. I've been up the Saimaa Lakes in Finland. I've done some miles, yeah. And, there's people say, oh, you must have seen everything. I say, I've probably only seen half, surprisingly, with the amount of travelling that I've done. So there's always more to see and to pine for, to see what's over that horizon.
And at the moment, you probably get this question a lot, so I apologise, but what's been the most incredible crossing experience that you've had?
Oh man. I mean, doing the Drake Passage from Patagonia down to the Antarctic Peninsula is always pretty exciting, even in good weather. You've got a big swell usually running where it funnels down past Cape Horn. The passages up to Greenland are always interesting because all of a sudden from clear water you'll come across an ice pack and you've got to navigate around that, and you might have to go backwards to go forwards and east to go west. It's a matter of just threading your way around to find clear water. So that sort of navigation is very, very exhausting and slow going. So to me, an Atlantic crossing is absolutely simple. You just let the ropes go and point it that way, and then in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks you'll be there. So I more enjoy the difficult stuff, going up a river, or there's places in Greenland, for instance, where the hydrographic information isn't even there, and you've got to use a sonar to navigate to get into some areas, and that's very, very stressful because you have to know what you're looking at on the sonar, and you have to make sure you can pull up the boat if anything pops up out of the water. So I actually love doing sea time. I love doing passages. I know a lot of crew just can't bear it. They just get bored out of their mind. But I think that's one of the things that made me good as an endurance athlete, because if you're out running 100 miles through the mountains, or you're pulling a sled 1,000 miles across Alaska, there's times where the clock just gets elongated and you have to actually shut your brain down to get through it. Otherwise, it just drives you mentally insane thinking that you might be out in those rugged, uncomfortable conditions for another day or 5 days or whatever it is. I think being at sea, looking at water for days on end, really helped me cross over into endurance sport.
Just mentioned something there about the bits that really get you going and what you enjoy are the difficult passengers, and how crucial is it for you to have that trust in your crew?
Well, it's really crucial because, as much as I'm a lone ranger, I do also realise that at times you need help from people, and that overrides into mountaineering as well and ultra endurance sport. But at sea, you have to know that the people that are there in specific positions on the boat know what they're doing, because a captain can multitask to a certain extent, but there's times where you can't leave the wheel, or you just need other people doing the job. And also when you leave the wheel, that you have to know that you can go to your bunk and sleep deep and get some rest, and that the person on the wheel knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you're going to be awake with stress all night, just wondering if the guy on the wheel or the woman on the wheel is competent enough. That's some of the reasons why you have to pick good people, and people that.
Over your time, how has that been for you? Have you often had quite a successful hiring rate of crew, and you've really enjoyed, that's been something you've got a lot of success in?
Oh, yes and no.
Swings and roundabouts.
I always think that you obviously don't get to know a person through their CV or talking to them on the phone or even a Zoom call. You usually get to know someone if you sit down and drink a couple of beers with them, I hate to say.
No.
Or you go and do something like go and do a trip, or go surfing with them, or just anything like that, when the person turns off from their professional environment where they're being employed to do and become the person that they actually are. Because what you find is people put on a facade to get the job. And I'm sure everyone does that to a certain extent if they want the job. But then they get on the boat, and particularly when they get to sea or in an isolated environment, or they've been away for a bunch of time without seeing their friends, and you'll find out the exact person that they are, and sometimes it's not the person you thought they were. And this is one of the most difficult problems for a captain hiring crew. Everything looks good on the CV, you talk to them on the phone, but then when they get on board, things start changing. And, that's just human nature as well. Not everyone's going to get on with every single person. That's why it takes time, and you usually got to turn over people until you find the people that meld into one particular tribe, and one for all for one and one for all. And everyone helps out and the boat runs smooth, but incredibly difficult.
I imagine as well, in your ideal world, your hiring process would probably include some sort of ultra marathon, Amazon, camping, something trip that would really test them. And you say, brilliant, you passed the test, come on board.
Well, Kate, I'm going to tell you that I don't do that to everybody, because I know everyone's passion isn't doing what I do. I'd lose more people if I said, hey, you're not coming on until you run a 100-mile ultra or something like that.
I wouldn't make it on board, I tell you that.
I wouldn't expect you to either. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all about personalities, and it's about how you handle your personality. Because one thing I learned on those fishing trawlers all those years ago is you've got to keep your mouth shut unless you've got something constructive to say, because anything that needs to be said has to do with how the operation's going, and it's to keep the boat running, and anything else is superfluous. So it's the same on a yacht. Sometimes you just got to bite your tongue and let it ride just for the peace of the whole crew. And it's a difficult lesson for a lot of people to learn, but once they do, they'll find that their career will progress a lot more smoothly when they know that what they have to do to work at sea as a professional seafarer, because it is not for everyone. It's not an easy trip, and it's not an easy journey to do.
I think that's very valuable advice.
And the other thing I want to say is you have to ask questions. I see a lot of people, particularly in the yacht game, they're kind of instant experts, and they don't want anyone to think that they are not competent or they don't know something. It's almost like an embarrassment for them. But I'm all for telling the crew, if you want to ask a question about anything or you don't know how to do anything, it's not an embarrassment to ask for assistance in that. I think that's really, really important, because I ask questions every day. I don't care. I've done a lot of stuff and I know a little about a lot, but I love to learn. And I think people working at sea in an industry that you have to know so many different things about different parts of the whole operation and weather and everything else, you have to ask questions, otherwise you won't learn.
And essentially, at the end of the day, knowledge is power, and knowledge
Always.
shared is power shared.
It also goes with the captain and the heads of department. Their knowledge is not some black magic that they should, hold close to their chest. They need to let that out so the other people can learn it, and that makes their job easier as well, and less stress-free, because the team working under you have a fair idea of how the rest of the operation goes. So I'm big on that. Well, people sometimes look at a yacht captain and go, wow, like the education you must have to drive a multi-million-dollar asset and navigate it, and that, oh, incredible, bow down to you. Well, I'm not like that at all. We're not special people. And if someone wants to know how to drive the boat, then I'm all for it. I'll let the guys on my boat get on the controls when they can and do all the operations. If it's about learning how to operate the crane during lifting operations. I'm not like, okay, the captain and the engineer's the only one that drives a crane. I'm like, all you guys need to learn how to drive the crane, because you have to know the parameters that make it a safe operation, and in the future you might be asked to do it yourself. So just learn now.
Yeah, and especially it's like led in the right way as well. Like if you can oversee that and see that it's done in a safe way, everyone is listening to one another, it's a calm environment, it leads to just so much more success.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, boat, particularly a yacht, is not a little fiefdom of the captain. Okay, it has to be democratic in some sense, that everybody should know all facets of how a boat works. And I've been an engineer as well, and I was interested in doing that because I wanted to know how a ship works, and I want to know how everything works on the boat. That interests me.
I like that. And from that, so you spend so much time on board and you do all of these things, and we're going to lead so nicely into everything in your world that has led to these incredible achievements. So you've obviously smashed yachting, you've done so much in that. And then you mentioned Everest in the same sentence. So how did that come about? Where is this adventure and need for just such accomplishments to come from?
I started this as a young boy. I've always looked at the horizon and wondered what's over the horizon, and I always wanted to do stuff. I loved learning. I never got a chance to go to university or anything like that. I left school quite early to do a blue-collar trade, but I did that because I wanted to get out in the world and start seeing it. Anything I tried to do, whether it was surfing or flying hang gliders or riding motorcycles across the desert, was kind of a precursor to everything that I've done later on in life, including, mountaineering and ultra endurance events and stuff like that. So I've always been a little bit like that. And when I got into the yacht game, it's just when people started talking about explorer style boats, and I thought that's the type of boat I'd like to work on, because it's kind of a rugged type of boat and they usually go to different places. So I started in that part of the industry, and for many, many years just worked on explorer boats, doing off the track sort of stuff. And later on in life, I realized that I'd pent up so much stress from being a workaholic on these boats that one day the owner's son came on the boat. We're in Italy on the Amalfi Coast, and he said, I'm training to run a marathon. Why don't you come out and do a train and run with me? I said, mate, I haven't ran for like 30 years. But anyway, off we went. And after that, he gave me a book about this guy that had run 100 miles. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, why? And I was disappointed because I hadn't found out about this years and years before. Because as soon as I heard the word ultra runner, I wanted that associated with my name, because I knew I could do it even though I hadn't done it yet. And within 6 months, I'd already ran a number of 100-mile races, done a few Ironmans. And then qualified for the Badwater 135 Ultra across Death Valley in the middle of summer where the temperature gets up to like 50 degrees and your shoes melt. And I come second. I beat all these top tier athletes. There's 100 that are picked every year, and I managed to get a spot and I came second. And it's when that happened, I thought, man, I can really do this if I set my mind to it and just have some discipline about how to go about it. But I also was inherently stubborn as well because of everything I'd done as a young lad. So it was kind of progression that led me to all that.
Yeah, and that is like you just mentioned the word there, like resilience. Like these are not small things. Have you managed to do an Ironman yet? Are you on that hype, or are we just still doing way more ultra things?
The first year I started running ultra marathons, I did an Ironman for the first time then, and I think I've done 4 since then. I think my best time was 10 hours and 20 minutes, something like that. But I found I was really good at that because I had the running down. I was a pretty good swimmer because I've been a surfer all my life, so that kind of came naturally. And then the bike was just something you got on and gritted out for 112 miles and fell off it when you got back to the transition point. So I was all in on, as soon as I found out about ultra running, straight away I learned about Ironmans, and from ultra running I progressed into mountaineering because I have a terrible fear of heights and have for my whole life. And when I was a kid, I used to read books about guys climbing big mountains, and I thought I could never do that because of how dangerous it is and because of the height. But after running ultra marathons across the Alps and Colorado Rockies and the Himalayas and things like that, I learned how to climb, how to alpine climb and ice climb, and started working up bigger and bigger mountains until I got a chance to get on a Everest team in Tibet. You said, come and have a go. So I did. And we eventually summited in May 2018. So I was surprised because I was terrified most of the time because of the exposure. There was a lot of time, there was a 10,000 foot drop right beside you. But I just kept pushing on with that kind of stubbornness my mum gave me and made it up and made it back, more importantly.
And do you feel at that point adrenaline just kicked in and kept you going because you couldn't go back? It was a forward only mission.
Yeah, there was times I can remember my body totally tensed up from fear, and I thought, I can't move. If I don't move, I'm going to die, obviously. So it was total mental force you had to put on every part of your body, including your mental acuity, because you had to get over that fear of the height. It's one of the most difficult things I've done. And for me, running ultra marathons is more about being a lone ranger. And one of the things that drew me to it is because I'm inherently a loner and I like to do things myself. And an ultra marathon, you might have aid stations and that along the way, but it's all about you getting to the end. You're the only person that can get to your end. Whereas if you're climbing a big mountain, you really have to, if you're not solo climbing, of course, which I've done a little of, you have to rely on your team and you have to be a team player because you're protecting the other person's life as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's where your inherent safety came in from yachting. That was a nice tie-in, and that's how you've done what you've done, and that's your philosophy is all tied together through safety and looking after each other as well. So it's amazing, and your accomplishments are incredible, and I think everyone should read your book.
Well, I'd love lots of people to read my book. Just for the fact that the basis of the book is on an Australian ethos called have a go. Down under, it doesn't matter what you try, whether you fail at it or you look like an idiot doing it or whether you're successful at it. It's all about the effort you put into just having a go at doing whatever that is. It's whether you're trying to park your car or take off on a wave on a reef or anything like that. So I hope people that read the book get that out of it, that you don't need to be a special person, which I'm not. You just have to have passion to chase after something that you're interested in or that you want to try. And regardless of whatever anyone else thinks about it, people think I'm a little bit crazy for going and doing some of this stuff and endangering myself. But to me, it makes my life richer and it makes me realise exactly the person that I am, not just wonder about it when I'm lying in bed at night.
Yeah, that's amazing. So these are what you've done. What is next for you, Grant?
Well, I'm 60 years old now. I'm a pretty young 60. I'm still surfing. I'm still running, still doing some ultra marathons. I'm going to pull a sled 1,000 miles across Alaska again next January on the Iditarod Trail. I plan to keep working at sea for at least the next 5 years, even if not a bit longer, because I just have that passion for that. And I know I'm competent at it because I've been doing it a long time and I've focused on getting up the ladder, and it's been a hard grind to get there. I'm married to an absolutely wonderful girl. She's like my best mate. I wish I'd met her 40 something years ago. She's an absolute gem. I'm enjoying those things in my life. I'm so enjoying that I'm still active. I had a bout with
Very,
cancer
very
a
active.
couple of years ago. Yeah, yeah. But it's all about health,
Yeah.
I've been through cancer. That's okay now. Well, I hope,
Amazing.
but it's something that a lot of people get these days. Last night, I had a really dear friend pass away from ALS, which just broke my heart. The day before that, I had a ultra running friend from Canada had to have brain surgery for a cancerous tumor. So that makes me realize all the time that, hey, things might change in the next 5 minutes. So just keep milking things out of your life that you have passion for and that you want, and just go for it. Doesn't matter how radical it is.
Just have a go.
Yeah, just totally have a go. Yeah, that says
I
it in a
like that.
nutshell right there.
I'll start saying that
Yeah.
to our family. So
Yeah, that's the total basis of my book, and hopefully it shows people that you don't have to be Superman or anything like that to do the sort of stuff I do. And it doesn't mean that I think everyone should do what I do. It's just if you have a passion, go for it, chase it.
I like that. And my finishing question to you is, what is worse, a busy charter or an ultra marathon?
I'm going to say busy charter because you're working for someone else. You're trying to get to the end, and it's going to be a difficult task. So for me, going out on an ultra marathon, that's a pleasure for me because I took it up to relieve stress and to challenge myself. So I actually enjoy looking forward to thrashing myself half to death by trying to run over a mountain or run 300 miles across Tennessee or whatever I'm doing. So that's the answer to your question.
I like the answer. So if listeners want to find out where to find your book, Freezing Hot, where can they find it?
So Freezing Hot, ultra running through fire and ice is on Amazon. It's on softcover as well as ebook. And I've just finished the audio book as well. So that's on Audible under Freezing Hot, ultra running through fire and ice. And if you get a chance, pick it up, listen to it or read it, however you want to get it into your system. And I hope everyone enjoys it.
And so that's your book. And where can they find you, Grant?
I'm on Instagram under Dingo Fish Express. That's like my race moniker. Also have a Facebook page, but Instagram is where I like to put photographs of what I'm doing. I'm also on LinkedIn, which, as a professional platform that helps me out in the industry that I'm involved in. But if you want to see photos and stories about what I've done, then go to Dingo Fish Express on Instagram.
I will tag it all below and I will put all the details of your book as well, because I just think that everyone should give that a read. You are such an inspiration and I'm so excited to see what you get up to this year. And I wish you all the best. And I'm so glad to have you on this podcast and just hear about an amazing story of somebody in our industry just doing incredible things. So thank you so much for joining me on this.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Yachting Brief. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to like, comment and subscribe below. And if you want to get involved in season 2 of the Yachting Brief podcast, give me a message at hello@studiovoyage.co.uk.